She replied in ancient tongue. Alien priest dropped his staff. Impossible. Before we dive into this story, drop a quick hi in the comments and tell me where you're watching from. It really helps support the channel. The Grand Temple of Valos loomed against the burnt orange sky, its crystalline spires reaching toward the twin moons that hung like watchful eyes over the alien landscape. And in its shadow stood Dr. Emily Parker, the only human for 20 light years, clutching her translator device and wondering how she'd ended up at the center of an interstellar diplomatic crisis. The journey that had brought Emily to this moment began 3 standard Earth months earlier, aboard the research vessel Horizon. As the ship's lead linguist and cultural specialist, Emily had been studying transmissions from the Velosan civilization for over 2 years. The Velosans were one of the oldest known species in the charted galaxy, with a rich cultural history spanning over 50,000 years. Their language was complex, filled with tonal subtleties and contextual meanings that had confounded Earth's best translation algorithms. Emily sat in her small office aboard the Horizon, surrounded by holographic projections of Velosan texts. Her dark hair was pulled back in a messy bun, and she absently chewed on the end of a stylus as she studied the intricate script. The blue light of the projections cast shadows across her face, emphasizing the dark circles under her eyes. "Dr. Parker," a voice called from the doorway. "The captain requests your presence on the bridge." Emily looked up to see Communications Officer Ryan Mitchell standing there. His usual confident posture seemed stiff, and there was an unusual tension in his voice. "Did he say what it's about?" Emily asked, already rising from her desk. "We've received a direct communication from the Velosan High Council," Ryan replied. "They're requesting a human representative to attend some kind of ceremony. The captain thinks you're our best option." Emily felt her heart rate quicken. Direct contact with the Velosans was unprecedented. Despite humanity's expansion into the stars over the past century, many of the older spacefaring civilizations had kept their distance, observing but rarely engaging. The Velosans, with their ancient civilization and technological sophistication, had been particularly aloof. "Me? But I'm just a linguist," Emily said, following Ryan through the ship's bright corridors. "Shouldn't a diplomat handle this?" "We're 3 months from Earth, Doctor," Ryan replied with a shrug. "You're the closest thing to a Velosan expert we've got. Besides, the message specifically requested someone with knowledge of their language and customs." When they reached the bridge, Captain Ethan Cole was standing before the main view screen, his broad shoulders set in a tense line. On the screen was a Velosan, their iridescent scales shimmering in the light, multifaceted eyes gleaming with an intelligence that seemed to reach through the screen. The Velosan's elongated head was adorned with a headdress of intricate metalwork and glowing stones that Emily recognized as a mark of high status. "Dr. Parker," the captain said without turning around. "This is Elder Thal of the Velosan High Council. They've requested a human representative for an important ceremony, and I've suggested you for the role." Emily stepped forward, her throat suddenly dry. She carefully formed the traditional Velosan greeting with her hands, a complex gesture involving all 10 fingers in precise positions. "Honored Elder," she said, pronouncing each word carefully in the Velosan language. "I am humbled by your attention." The elder's expression was difficult to read, but the slight tilt of their head suggested approval. When they spoke, their voice had the characteristic musical quality of the Velosan language, like multiple tones harmonizing together. "Your understanding of our ways is impressive for one so young," Elder Thal said. "The ceremony of echoes approaches. It occurs once in 10,000 cycles when the 3 moons align. We have observed your species with interest and believe a human representative should witness this event. It would be historically significant." Emily translated in her head, aware that the captain and crew were relying on her to understand the nuances of what was being proposed. The ceremony of echoes wasn't something she'd encountered in her research, but the name suggested something to do with history or remembrance. "I would be honored to attend," Emily replied, hoping her pronunciation was accurate. "What would be required of me?" "Simply to observe," Elder Thal said, though Emily caught a subtle harmonic in their voice that suggested there was more to it than that. "A shuttle will be sent to bring you to our world in 3 days. Prepare for a stay of 1 lunar cycle. Before Emily could ask any further questions, the communication ended, leaving her staring at a blank screen. Well, Captain Cole said, turning to face her. It looks like you're going to be our ambassador, Dr. Parker. Captain, I don't know anything about this ceremony, Emily said. My knowledge of Velosan culture is academic at best. What if I make a mistake? This could be an unprecedented opportunity, the captain replied. The Velosans have never invited humans to their homeworld before. Whatever this ceremony is, they consider it important enough to break centuries of isolation. Emily spent the next 3 days in a frenzy of preparation. She reviewed everything in the ship's database about Velosan customs, practiced their formal language until her throat was sore, and packed what she hoped were appropriate items for the journey. The Velosan homeworld had a similar atmosphere to Earth, but higher gravity and a longer day-night cycle. She would need to adjust quickly. When the Velosan shuttle arrived, it was a thing of beauty, a sleek vessel that seemed to be made of flowing metal with no visible seams or joints. It docked with the horizon with a precision that spoke of advanced technology. The pilot who greeted Emily was a younger Velosan, their scales a brighter blue than Elder Thal's. I am Kira, they introduced themselves. I will be your guide during your stay on Valos. Emily was surprised to hear the Velosan speaking perfect English. You speak our language, she said, unable to hide her surprise. Kira made a gesture that Emily interpreted as the equivalent of a smile. We have been studying your species for some time. Your languages are simple but interesting. The journey to Valos took just under 2 Earth days. During that time, Emily tried to learn more about the ceremony of echoes, but Kira was politely evasive. It is difficult to explain to outsiders, they said. The ceremony connects us to our ancestors and to the future. It is both remembrance and prophecy. When they finally approached Valos, Emily gasped at the sight. The planet was smaller than Earth, with vast oceans of deep purple and continents in shades of amber and gold. 3 moons orbited the planet, 1 large and 2 small, currently moving into a rare alignment. The 3 sisters, Kira explained, noticing Emily's awe. When they align, the barriers between past and present thin, or so our traditions tell us. It is why the ceremony can only be performed during this time. They landed in what appeared to be a capital city, a sprawling metropolis of crystal towers and floating platforms connected by bridges of light. The architecture was organic, buildings flowing into one another like liquid frozen in motion. Despite the advanced technology evident everywhere, Emily noticed an emphasis on natural elements. Water flowing through channels in the city, gardens spiraling up the sides of buildings, and what appeared to be living components integrated into the structures themselves. Kira led Emily to her accommodations, a spacious room in a tower overlooking the city center. The room adjusted itself as she entered, the temperature and lighting shifting to what the systems presumably determined would be comfortable for a human. A large window offered a panoramic view of the city and the 3 moons growing closer in alignment. Rest now, Kira said. Tomorrow you will be presented to the High Council, and then preparations for the ceremony will begin. That night, Emily dreamed of ancient voices speaking in tongues she almost understood. She woke before dawn, feeling as though she'd been given a message she couldn't quite remember. The High Council chamber was a massive circular room at the top of the tallest spire in the city. 12 Velosans sat in a circle, each on a floating chair that hovered above the floor. Emily recognized Elder Thal among them, distinguished by their elaborate headdress. Emily Parker of Earth, Elder Thal announced. We welcome you to Valos and to the ceremony of echoes. Emily performed the formal bow she had practiced, careful to maintain the precise angle that showed respect without subservience. I am honored by your welcome and your trust in allowing me to witness your sacred tradition. There was a subtle shift in the atmosphere, a harmonic tension that Emily's translator didn't capture, but that she felt intuitively. The council members exchanged glances. You were chosen with purpose, said another council member, one whose scales had a reddish hue. Our records indicate that your species may have relevance to the ceremony. I don't understand, Emily said. Humans have only been spacefaring for a few centuries. Your civilization is thousands of years older than ours. Age is not always the most significant factor. Elder Thal replied cryptically. You will understand when the time comes. The next several days were filled with preparations. Emily was given traditional Velosan garments to wear for the ceremony, flowing robes of a material that seemed to change color with her movements. Kira taught her the ritual movements she would need to perform and helped her practice the formal phrases she would be expected to recite. These words are very ancient, Kira explained as Emily struggled with a particularly difficult passage. Even most Velosans don't understand their original meaning anymore. They are sounds preserved from the earliest days of our civilization. Then how will I know if I'm pronouncing them correctly? Emily asked, frustrated. The meaning is less important than the intention, Kira said. Focus on the rhythm and the tone. Let the words flow through you rather than from you. As the day of the ceremony approached, Emily noticed a change in the city. Velosans from all over the planet were arriving, filling the streets and gathering in public spaces. There was an air of anticipation, almost reverence, that reminded Emily of how humans might act before a major religious holiday or cosmic event. The night before the ceremony, Emily stood on the balcony of her room, looking up at the three moons now almost perfectly aligned. The largest moon was tinged red, casting a crimson glow over the city. The blood moon, said a voice behind her. Emily turned to see an elderly Velosan she didn't recognize. Their scales faded to a pale blue with age. I'm sorry, I didn't hear you come in, Emily said, startled. I am Mara, the Velosan said. I was a scholar of ancient languages before I joined the priesthood. Elder Thal thought we might have something to discuss before tomorrow's ceremony. Emily's interest was immediately piqued. You study languages? I'm a linguist myself. I've been fascinated by the Velosan language since I first encountered it. Mara made the Velosan gesture of acknowledgement. It is why you were chosen. Your understanding of linguistic patterns is unusual for a human. There is something I must show you. The elderly Velosan produced a small device, similar in appearance to Emily's translator, but clearly of Velosan design. When activated, it projected a three-dimensional image in the air between them, symbols that Emily didn't recognize. These inscriptions were discovered in a temple that predates our written history, Mara explained. They are estimated to be over 70,000 years old, carved into stone by our earliest ancestors. We have never been able to fully translate them, despite millennia of effort. Emily studied the strange glyphs, her mind automatically searching for patterns. What do you think they say? They are said to be the words that will be spoken at the end of the ceremony of echoes, Mara said. Words that will bridge the gap between what was lost and what will be found, according to our oldest legends. Emily felt a strange resonance as she looked at the symbols, as if they were almost familiar. And what do I have to do with this? Perhaps nothing, Mara said. Perhaps everything. The council did not choose you randomly, Emily Parker. There are similarities between these ancient glyphs and certain patterns in human linguistic structures, patterns that you, specifically, have studied. Emily's mind was racing. Are you suggesting some connection between ancient Velosans and humans? That's impossible. Our species evolved on planets light years apart. The universe holds many mysteries, Mara said. I simply ask that you keep these symbols in your mind during the ceremony tomorrow. Watch and listen carefully. That is all. After Mara left, Emily couldn't sleep. She kept returning to the balcony, watching the moons creep closer to perfect alignment, thinking about the strange glyphs and what they might mean. There was something tugging at the edges of her consciousness, like a word on the tip of her tongue that she couldn't quite recall. The day of the ceremony dawned with all three moons visible in the sky, now perfectly aligned. The red light of the blood moon gave everything an otherworldly glow. Emily dressed in the ceremonial robes she had been given, a shimmering fabric that flowed like liquid around her body, changing from deep blue to purple as she moved. Kira arrived to escort her to the temple, a massive structure at the city's heart that Emily had seen from a distance but never visited. Up close, it was even more impressive, built from what appeared to be a single enormous crystal that had been grown rather than constructed. The surfaces were carved with intricate patterns that Emily now recognized as similar to the glyphs Mara had shown her. The Temple of Echoes, Kira explained. It was ancient when our earliest written records began. Legend says it grew from a seed planted by our creator gods. Inside, The temple was a single vast chamber with a domed ceiling that somehow captured and amplified sound. Emily could hear the whispers of Velocians at the far end of the room as clearly as if they were standing beside her. In the center of the chamber was a raised dais with what appeared to be a pool of liquid silver, perfectly still and reflective. The Velocian High Council entered in procession, followed by figures in elaborate ceremonial garb that Emily assumed were priests or religious leaders. One in particular stood out, a tall Velocian with scales that seemed to shift between every color of the spectrum, carrying a staff topped with a crystal that glowed with inner light. This, Emily learned, was the High Priest of Echoes, the one who would conduct the ceremony. Emily was positioned at the edge of the dais, alongside representatives from a handful of other species. She recognized a few, a towering Drek with its characteristic exoskeleton, a pair of crystalline Lemurians, and a gaseous Vor contained within an environmental suit. Like her, they seemed uncertain of their role, watching the proceedings with a mixture of curiosity and reverence. The ceremony began with music, a haunting melody played on instruments Emily had never seen before, producing tones that seemed to resonate with the crystal walls of the temple itself. The high priest raised their staff, and the liquid in the pool began to move, swirling into patterns that matched the music's rhythm. "We gather in the shadow of the three sisters," the high priest intoned in the ancient Velocian tongue. "As they align, so do the streams of time. What was, what is, and what shall be, all flow together in this moment." The assembled Velocians responded with a phrase Emily had been taught, their voices blending in perfect harmony. "We are the echoes of the past, the voices of the present, the whispers of the future." For hours, the ceremony continued, a complex interplay of music, movement, and recitation. Emily followed along as best she could, speaking the responses she had been taught, moving as she had been shown. All the while, the pool of liquid silver in the center of the dais swirled and shifted, sometimes forming recognizable shapes before dissolving again. As the ceremony progressed, Emily felt a strange sensation building, a pressure in her mind, as if something was trying to push through from the other side of a barrier. The glyphs Mara had shown her kept appearing in her thoughts, more insistent now, almost as if they were trying to rearrange themselves into something she could understand. The light in the temple dimmed until only the glow from the high priest's staff and the shimmer of the silver pool illuminated the vast space. The music grew more intense, the rhythm quickening as the ceremony reached its climax. The high priest stepped onto the dais and stood at the edge of the pool, staff raised high. The liquid silver rose up to meet the crystal at the staff's tip, forming a column that connected the pool to the staff. When the high priest spoke again, their voice seemed to come from everywhere at once. "Now comes the moment of echoes, when the veil between times grows thin. We call to those who came before, whose wisdom guides us still. We call to those who will follow, whose paths we prepare. Speak, O ancestors, that we might hear your counsel." The silver column began to pulse with light, and within it, shapes began to form. Faces, figures, scenes from what Emily assumed was Velocian history. The assembled crowd watched in awe as the images shifted and changed. Emily noticed that many of the Velocians seemed surprised, some even disturbed, by what they were seeing. And then, without warning, the images changed. Instead of Velocian figures, Emily saw what appeared to be humans, not modern humans, but something more primitive, yet somehow familiar. They were gathered around what looked like a similar pool of silver liquid, performing what could only be described as a ritual that paralleled the one she was witnessing. A murmur ran through the crowd. The high priest's multifaceted eyes widened, and they spoke rapidly to the council members in a dialect Emily's translator couldn't follow. The images in the silver column continued to shift, showing more scenes of these ancient humans, interacting with beings that looked like early Velocians. Suddenly, the column of silver collapsed back into the pool, which began to bubble and churn violently. The music stopped abruptly, and a hush fell over the temple. The high priest approached the pool cautiously, staff extended. From the pool, a voice spoke, not in the musical tones of Velocian, but in a language that made Emily's blood run cold. It was ancient, guttural, and yet she understood it perfectly. It was speaking in Proto-Indo-European, one of the oldest reconstructed human language families, which had been the subject of her doctoral thesis. The voice spoke 3 sentences, then fell silent. The high priest stood frozen, staff trembling in their grasp. The Velosan council members looked at each other in confusion. No one seemed to understand what had been said. Without thinking, Emily stepped forward. It spoke in an ancient human language, she said, her voice echoing in the sudden silence. It said, "The circle closes. The separated children return. What was sundered becomes whole." The high priest turned to her, multifaceted eyes reflecting the dim light. "You understood the voice from the pool?" "Impossible. Those words are from the oldest Velosan prophecy, never revealed to outsiders." "It wasn't speaking Velosan," Emily explained. "It was speaking Proto-Indo-European, a reconstructed ancestor of many human languages. It's been extinct for thousands of years, but I studied it extensively." The high priest seemed about to respond when the pool began to bubble again. This time, when the voice spoke, it used a language that even Emily didn't recognize, more ancient than anything she had studied, with sounds that human vocal cords would struggle to produce. To everyone's astonishment, Emily felt her mind making connections, finding patterns in the strange speech that linked it to both Proto-Indo-European and ancient Velosan. Without fully understanding how, she found herself able to grasp the meaning. "It's saying something about separation and reunion," she said hesitantly. "About a journey across stars and a return after great cycles of time." The high priest stared at her in shock. "How can you understand? These are the first words, spoken before our histories began." The voice from the pool spoke again, longer this time, a complex series of sounds that seemed to resonate with the crystal walls of the temple itself. Emily listened intently, her mind racing to process what she was hearing. "It's telling a story," she said slowly, "about beings who seeded life across many worlds, who guided evolution on different planets. It says that humans and Velocans, and maybe others, were deliberately developed along parallel paths, meant to eventually reunite." As she spoke, Emily found herself stepping closer to the pool, drawn by a compulsion she couldn't explain. The silver liquid rippled as if in response to her presence. The high priest made no move to stop her, seemingly too shocked by the turn of events. The voice spoke once more, this time in what was unmistakably the ancient Velosan language that Emily had been struggling to learn. Without thinking, she responded in the same tone, the words flowing from her lips as naturally as if she had been speaking it all her life. The high priest dropped their staff in shock, the crystal at its tip shattering as it hit the floor. "Impossible," they whispered. The pool's surface erupted, the liquid silver rising up in a column once more. But this time, it formed a clear image, a star map showing Earth and Valos, along with dozens of other worlds, all connected by lines that formed a complex pattern. At the center of this pattern was a star system Emily didn't recognize. "The homeworld," whispered the high priest. "The birthplace of all intelligent life, lost to time." The image shifted, showing a sequence of events. Massive ships leaving a dying world, traveling to distant stars, seeding planets with the building blocks of life, guiding evolution over millions of years. Emily watched in awe as the story unfolded. The story of a precursor civilization that had created both humans and Velocans, along with countless other species across the galaxy. "We're all connected," Emily said, the realization dawning on her. "Not just culturally or through some cosmic coincidence. We were literally created by the same beings, designed to develop along similar paths." Elder Thal stepped forward, eyes fixed on the images still flowing from the pool. "The ceremony of echoes has never revealed so much. For 10,000 cycles, we have performed this ritual, hoping to glean wisdom from our ancestors. Never have we received such clear messages." "It's because she's here," said Mara, emerging from the crowd. The prophecy spoke of a time when the scattered children would return to each other. When the star siblings stand together before the pool of memory, the true history will be revealed. The high priest retrieved their broken staff, examining the shattered crystal with trembling hands. "For all our advancement, all our knowledge, we never suspected. We thought ourselves one of the eldest races in the galaxy." "As did we," Emily said. Humans have always wondered if we were alone in the universe. Even after we discovered other intelligent species, we assumed we had all evolved independently. The images in the silver column began to fade, the liquid slowly sinking back into the pool. A final image lingered for a moment, a symbol that matched exactly the central glyph Mara had shown Emily the night before. Now, Emily understood its meaning. Unity, she said. It means unity. In the days that followed, the implications of what had been revealed in the Temple of Echoes rippled through Velosan society. The High Council called an emergency session that included representatives from all major spacefaring races in the sector. Emily found herself at the center of it all, no longer just an observer, but a key participant in what was quickly becoming a historic moment of interstellar cooperation. Scholars from Valos worked alongside Emily to develop a more complete understanding of the connections between their languages. What they discovered was astonishing. Beneath the surface differences, there were fundamental structural similarities that couldn't be explained by coincidence. It was as if both languages had evolved from a single, unimaginably ancient source. It's like discovering you have a family you never knew existed, Emily explained to Captain Cole during a subspace communication. The Velosans aren't just allies or trading partners now. They're literally our distant cousins. The implications are staggering, the captain replied, his image flickering slightly in the holographic projection. If humans and Velosans were created by the same precursor civilization, what about the other species we've encountered? Could we all be part of some grand design? That's what we're trying to figure out, Emily said. The Velosans have invited representatives from 12 other species to participate in the research. Some of them are already finding similar linguistic and genetic markers. The search for the homeworld depicted in the star map became a priority for the coalition of species that formed in the wake of the ceremony. Ancient Velosan astronomical records were combined with data from other civilizations, including humanity's relatively recent stellar surveys. Together, they began to narrow down the possibilities. 6 months after the Ceremony of Echoes, Emily stood on the observation deck of a Velosan exploration vessel, watching as they approached a star system that had been hidden behind a dense nebula, obscured from detection by all but the most advanced scanning technology. Beside her stood Kira, now a close friend, and Mara, whose expertise in ancient languages had proven invaluable. Could this really be it? Emily asked, looking at the unremarkable yellow star growing larger in the view screen. The birthplace of all of us. The coordinates matched the star map from the ceremony, Kira said, and the astronomical data suggests this star is old enough, over 4 billion years. I never thought I would live to see this day, Mara said, their aged scales reflecting the light from the star. Our oldest legends speak of a return to the cradle of creation at the end of the Great Cycle. I believe them to be metaphorical, not literal. As they entered the system, sensors detected a habitable planet in the Goldilocks zone, not too close to the star, not too far. Initial scans showed no signs of current civilization, but as they moved into orbit, they discovered something that made Emily's heart race. Artificial structures, ancient beyond imagining, covered by millennia of vegetation and erosion, but undeniably the work of intelligent beings. The first expedition to the surface included representatives from all 13 species in the coalition. Emily found herself walking alongside beings with physiologies vastly different from her own, yet all sharing a common purpose: to discover their shared origins. The ruins were extensive, covering much of a continent. What must have once been magnificent cities were now little more than outlines visible from orbit. But beneath the surface, protected from time and the elements, they discovered vast chambers filled with technology and records that had survived the eons. In one such chamber, Emily stood before a wall covered in inscriptions that combined elements of all their languages. Beside her, a holographic interface flickered to life as Velosan scientists activated the ancient system. A figure appeared, humanoid but with features that seemed to blend aspects of various species. When it spoke, the language was unlike any Emily had heard before, and yet somehow comprehensible to her, as if the knowledge had been buried deep in her mind, waiting to be awakened. "Greetings, children of the seeding," the figure said. "If you are viewing this message, then the great experiment has succeeded beyond our hopes. You have found your way back to each other and to the home of your creators. The being explained how their civilization had faced extinction due to a cosmic catastrophe. Their sun had been destabilized by a passing neutron star. Knowing they could not save themselves, they had launched a final project, seeding promising worlds across the galaxy with life based on their own genetic template, but modified to thrive in different environments. We did not want our knowledge and achievements to be lost, the figure continued. But neither did we wish to constrain your development with the burden of our past. So we left subtle guideposts, linguistic patterns encoded at a level deeper than conscious thought, cultural tendencies that would eventually lead compatible species to recognize each other, and ceremonies like the Velosan echoes that would, when the time was right, reveal the truth. The message concluded with a statement that left Emily and the others in stunned silence. You are not merely our successors. You are our children, our legacy, and our hope. Now that you have found each other and returned to this place, the second phase of the great project can begin. All that we were is yours to rediscover. In the years that followed, the coalition of sibling species grew as more civilizations discovered their connection to the precursors, as they came to be called. The homeworld became a neutral site for cooperation and exchange, a place where the artificial barriers that had separated related species began to dissolve. Emily remained at the forefront of this new era, helping to reconstruct the precursor language that was the ancestor of all their tongues. She established the first interspecies university on the homeworld, where scholars from across the galaxy came to study their shared heritage. On the 10th anniversary of the ceremony of echoes that had started it all, Emily stood once again in the Temple of Echoes on Valos. The High Priest, a new one now, as the former had retired after the revelations, raised their staff over the silver pool. But this time, representatives of 27 species stood around the dais, each speaking in their own language the same phrase. We are the echoes of the past, the voices of the present, the whispers of the future. As Emily spoke the words in human standard, followed by the ancient Velosan phrase she now knew by heart, she felt the profound truth of those words in a way she never could have imagined when she first arrived on this world as an uncertain linguist. The barriers of language and biology that had separated them were never as significant as the common origin that united them. The silver pool rippled, but this time there was no voice from the depths, no mysterious visions. There didn't need to be. The message had been delivered, the separated children had found their way back to each other, and a new chapter in the shared history of all intelligent life in the galaxy had begun. As Emily looked around at the diverse beings gathered in the temple, some with scales, some with exoskeletons, some with crystalline bodies, but all distant cousins sharing a common ancestor, she thought of how far they had all come and how much further they might go together. The circle had closed. What was sundered had become whole again, and in that unity, they had found something greater than any of them could have achieved alone, a family that spanned the stars. And that was the end of the story. If you listened all the way to here, don't forget to leave feedback about what you thought of the story in the comments, whether positive or negative. Your feedback helps us improve. Also leave your like and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this one. And I'll leave here on the screen another video that I'm sure you'll like. Big hug and see you in the next story.